Good evening and welcome to another art stream with myself, Pharaoh, and my co-hosts, Alexander Adams and Panama Hats. Hope you are doing well this evening, gentlemen.
I'm doing well. Diversity is our strength, comrades.
Yes, indeed. I love the nation of Israel, and we have nothing to lose but our chains.
Beautiful. Now, I just want to apologise in advance. I'm having some technical issues. I'm lagging quite badly. So I think we're going to try and kick off with maybe a quick recap of what we've been going through. Mr. Hat, if you wouldn't mind taking us through that. And I know that Alex has got some initial images to take us through. So what is the current series on Panama?
Well, some of you will no doubt remember in that long ago, before Christmas, before New Year, a whole year ago, we started to look at some pictures of what the original idea was to look at based versus cringe, or right wing versus left wing fashion and clothing and aesthetics and sort of personal aesthetics. I mean by that. And so we started looking at pictures of various leaders, various events, various people that fought for sort of based causes on the one hand and not so based causes on the other. This took us into two different parts, and now we're on the third part, which I would hazard is going to be the last one. But that's a very risky thing to say on this channel. So I don't know about that. But yeah, so we've got even more images. I think we're on to the what are we at now? The sort of early 20th century.
I think we've done the pre-war dictators. Yeah. So we're on sort of Second World War onwards, I believe.
We finished up with D'Annunzio, I think, last time, and we discussed his incredible collection of gowns and suits and naughty slippers that he had. I think possible contender for the best dressed man ever. Looking at him,
but, yes, very dapper, and it did seem as though he had money to spend on that, so he could get stuff custom made.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. Well, and I'll just continue on with one last remark about him, is that the reason he was like that is not because he was friends with the regime, but because he was something of an enemy of it. Mussolini considered him a rival and quite a dangerous threat to his power. And Mussolini said to an advisor, when you have a very painful tooth, you have two options. You either yank it out or you pack it with gold. And with D'Annunzio, I've chosen the latter option. So basically, he just sort of piled him with money and houses and titles. He made him a prince of something or other in Italy, and that's really how D'Annunzio got his wealth in that.
One day, someone will do that to you, Hat.
Please. Pack me with gold, don't yank me out. Basically, if you're gonna, I will stay quiet and cause no trouble if that option is taken.
Yes, I think we're also doing a sweepstake on how many capes will appear in this stream.
Yes,
I haven't seen the images yet, so I don't know.
But I think we are. Well, I haven't seen them since I put them in, and that was back in late November, I think. So I haven't actually got much of a memory of these now. But yes, I think we are entering the age of the cape. The great drape over the shoulders,
We are hopelessly vamping to fill time while Pharaoh loads up his images. So I shouldn't reveal that. But
well, Alex, you said you could potentially kick us off with some initial images to get us going while stuff continues to load my side.
Yes. Do I sort of share screen? Is that it? Yeah. Share
Take
screen.
The risk.
Oh dear. Right. Oh dear. I've already blown it. I've blown it already. There you are.
Oh no.
Okay.
You can share a tab, I think. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. No, that's fine. Essentially, we talked about Salvador Dali, and in one of our streams, we looked at this image, which is the Temptation of St. Anthony, painted in 1946. The painting is now in the Museum of Fine Arts of Brussels.
Your screen is not shared, by the way.
Is it not shared?
No. Well, I can't see it.
Okay. Right. I have pressed share. I've pressed chat.
Is there something that you have to enable?
No, it's okay. I've done it now. Okay, so you should be seeing. Oh, damn blur.
Yeah.
So
okay, I've got it.
Oh, there we go.
Okay,
There we go.
Okay, so thank you very much. Right, so we talked about Salvador Dali. Salvador Dali was painting paintings in the USA. At this time, he lived in the USA in 1946, before his return to Spain in, I think, 49. He was part of a competition, and he painted this famous painting of Saint Anthony. Saint Anthony famously tempted in the desert by the devil. And obviously, this has given artists great license to create works of imagination, of horror, of carnal temptation, of sometimes it's naked women, sometimes it's fruit. There's a rather amusing image by a certain French academic painter in the Wallace collection in London of a monk famously thrusting away melons and grapes that are in his face. That seems like a rather overreaction if you don't know what's going on in the painting. So, Temptation of Saint Anthony. So we see Saint Anthony turning away these famous long-legged horse and elephants. Now, someone, I think, asked me about the significance of the obelisk on the elephant. I can tell you, actually, I think I knew this anyway, but I think we were pelting through at such a rate that we didn't have time to look at this. And it's this actually comes from quite a famous elephant. There was a famous gift of a white elephant from King Manuel to Pope Leo X, because Leo was dividing up the New World between Spain and Portugal as to what their areas of influence would be. So King Manuel wanted to create a good impression with the Pope, so he sent him a white elephant. And this arrived in 1514. So I'll read you a little quote from a book here. The elephant made a particularly arresting sight. A silver tower-like structure had been placed on its back, containing the ecclesiastical gifts. The elephant's Indian trainer was seated on its back, with its Saracen custodian leading it. When the procession passed the Castel San Angelo, the elephant stopped in front of the watching Pope, knelt to the ground, deferentially bowed its head, trumpeted, filled its trunk with from a water trough, and gently sprayed the Pope and his companions. The Pope was delighted. And this excess, this extreme sort of cultivation of luxury goods and worldly goods and gifts was, of course, taken up by Martin Luther. And it was one of his, so this was one of his prime charges against the venality of the Catholic Church, was this use of this accepting of luxuries and gifts. And so it became a famous sort of cause célèbre. And it became the origin of the phrase we know today as the white elephant, a gift which is so costly that it's more of a curse, because you have to feed these animals.
I was going to say, is that the elephant in the room?
No, it's not the elephant room, but it is the white elephant. That was a quote from Diplomatic Gifts, A History of 50 Presents by Paul Brummel. My review of that book will be in the Salisbury Review, the next issue, and I can show you. This is The Elephant and Obelisk by Bernini, which I believe commemorates that gift to Leo X. And Salvador Dali would have seen this on his visit to Rome in 1936 or 1937. And if he knew, and he did know quite a lot about art, so he would have seen this in reproduction before then. So this is the origin of that image in The Temptation of Saint Anthony. There you go.
That is absolutely fascinating.
Thank you. And I should have picked up on it earlier, but there you are. Thank you.
Okay, so the good news is I've managed to get some pictures up, but they're not all fully loaded. I have to tell you, it's a exceedingly large resolution image of Mugabe that is currently suffering the stream.
I don't remember putting that in, but I think that was added as a late addition.
Or
I
maybe
have.
that's something from
Well,
Ferro's personal collection.
Yeah.
It is. It's from my personal Mugabe collection that I collect him like rare pepes, basically. What I've done. Someone in the comments last time said about dictators. So I've actually pulled together a quite nice little list of some classic looks from various dictators, but but I haven't managed to get your list up yet, Hat. So maybe we'll just go with the dictators for now, and then I'm gonna
That's fine.
have some.
I mean, these don't really have to be in order.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. Let me just share my screen. Okay. Can we see?
Loading. There we go. Oh, there he is, our boy.
Well, yeah. I thought I'd kick us off with a strong start. I mean, this is the classic Franco look. I mean, this is just such an iconic photo in so many ways. I do wonder who the photographer is. They should definitely be applauded, because just a few little details about the picture itself. You've got obviously kind of Franco in the center in focus. You've got the kind of blurred out background, meaning there's like a really tight focal range, but you've got just a few little interesting details here, like the telephone on the desk. But Hat, obviously, I think you're probably the biggest expert around his life here.
The biggest nerd, the biggest simp for Generalissimo Francisco Franco.
But maybe, do you want to give a little intro, and we can then chat through this classic?
All right. That's a bit risky because, as you say, I am a bit of a nerd on this man, so I do have a tendency to ramble. So yes, he was a Spanish sort of man. He was born in Galicia in the would have been late 1880s, I think, or early 1890s. He had a very strict father who was absent because he had a relationship and children with another woman other than Franco's mother, so was often not with their family home. He was often off in Madrid, and he had a very strict but loving and extremely Catholic mother who instilled a kind of hardcore conservatism in him. He wanted to join the Navy like his father had been, but right around the time he tried to, Spain lost a catastrophic war to the Americans, which meant that they lost all their overseas territories other than a tiny strip of North Africa. They lost Cuba, they lost the Philippines, they lost a whole load of islands and possessions in the Pacific. It was complete disaster. So the military academy, the naval academy he wanted to join closed because the Navy was being massively shrunk because Spain no longer had this huge empire. So he joined the infantry academy in Toledo, I believe, at the age of 14. That's how young you could join the military academy back then, because it served as a kind of school. So he then worked his way up through the military academy. He came out at age 17 or so as a lieutenant. And at the military academy, because Franco was quite short, he had quite a high-pitched voice, and he wasn't especially good at military academy. He was often bullied, but nevertheless, he was extremely kind of dare to die. You know, it was said that he wasn't the brightest chap that you would meet, but he would get whatever job you needed done. And so pretty quickly then, after he got out of the military academy, he was sent to North Africa, where, as I said, Spain had its one last remaining colonial possession, this tiny strip of land in Morocco. And the Spanish were trying to pacify it because the tribes there were extremely rebellious. The Spanish, being the Spanish, they were extremely incompetent when it came to suppressing this revolt. They could not get to grips with it. And they were losing men at such a rate that it was said that an officer would soon be sent home either with a coffin or with a general's sash. So basically, you would either be promoted extremely quickly because all the other officers had died, or you yourself would die. And Franco, in something that would mark him for the rest of his life, was basically kind of absurdly lucky when it came to this war. He was shot in the stomach. He was shot in the neck because this was a man who refused to ever take cover in a trench, for example. He would always be sort of walking around above the parapet giving orders to his troops, and he got shot several times. And in fact, there was a surgeon who said that the wound he got in his gut, had he not been breathing in at that exact minute, he would have been killed. But just because of the position his diaphragm was, he survived. And he became this kind of god to the Moroccan troops, the Spanish colonial Moroccan troops that they were using, who thought that he had the kind of the blessing of Allah, and that he couldn't be killed, which may have been true. So after that, he basically sort of fought in North Africa for a long, long time. Very quickly earned promotion. I think he was he was a major by the time he was 21, a colonel by 24. He was, I think, then he was promoted to general at 33, making him the youngest general in Europe since Napoleon. He was known for his monarchism. He was a friend of the king, King Alfonso. And he was known as a kind of dark horse of the military when the king was overthrown in 1931. But he kind of went quiet, and he didn't really seem to want to overthrow the Republic. However, come the coup of 1936, he's kind of reluctant. He sort of drags his feet. He's not so keen on being a part of it. He eventually just decides to join and kind of, well, if we're going to do this, let's do this. Let's get rid of these leftists once and for all. He's in a kind of very minor capacity because he's not even in Spain at the time. He's in the Canary Islands, and he has to be kind of flown in to Spain. A great trouble. He then brings over he on his own initiative. He basically phones Hitler over in the Reich and requests transport planes to bring his troops over from Africa, his crack elite troops, when the rest of the army in Spain, of course, is just made up of sort of conscripts and sort of not particularly good troops. So he manages to get Hitler to agree to that. He flies his army of Africa over into Spain and begins wreaking havoc, basically. He sort of cuts through about, a third of Spain or something in a couple of weeks with these very elite troops, and pushes the Republicans, the leftists, all the way up to the gates of Madrid. He tries to take Madrid, but ultimately fails. And part of the reason is because he sends off a large quantity of troops to relieve the siege of the Alcazar in Toledo. And this is basically a great stroke of genius for him, because it means that he now has this enormous propaganda victory. I believe that Toledo was the final battle of the Reconquista, when the Moors were thrown out of Spain, which is a bit ironic given that Franco was using Moors as his troops. But anyway, that's an irony that is often brought up when talking about the Civil War. And yes, so basically, as we all know, eventually he goes on to win the Civil War. He becomes leader of the Nationalists because the other two leaders are killed in plane crashes, which, and people have said, well, was this kind of a thing that he orchestrated? As far as we know, it wasn't. He didn't really have any plan to do that or become leader. The other two just happened to die in plane crashes. And so he just lucks his way into being leader. And then he wins the Civil War, becomes the dictator of Spain, where he remains so until 1974, I think, when he dies. And he's succeeded by King Alfonso. King Alfonso. He's succeeded by King Juan Carlos I, who I'll say who unfortunately restores the country to constitutional democracy. And there you have it. And I think this picture is from the start of the Civil War, is it not?
Yes, yeah. And he's obviously in officer attire. Just a few interesting, immediate notes. If you think back to kind of some of the outfits compared to kind of First World War Brits or the French, even, you've got the kind of closed collar at the top, large pockets. The interesting sash as well. That kind of remind me of the Vaudet, was it? The French monarchists.
Yes, that's right. The sash, yes, ancient symbol of authority.
Yeah, and then you've got his cane as well. In terms of like little authority things, but we talked a big cloak game, and I think Franco's jacket slash cloak here is quite wonderful, basically. So
Yes. And I was going to ask you actually, because you see from this period a lot of Spanish people in photographs, military and civilian, have this thing with the collar where they seem to have like a sort of vest or a shirt or a waistcoat that goes all the way up to the neck. Then the shirt collar is like over the top of the collar of the vest or the tunic. Do you know anything about that, or what that's called, or why?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. You can see he's obviously wearing a shirt from across down here, but it's obviously kind of peeking at the top as a fully round collar. Although I think some people would always have these kind of like very thin cravats, which it's almost kind of like to prevent any kind of cold air getting in the top.
Yeah.
But I don't know the technical terminology for it.
So what do you make of this great cloak here, with its many sort of buttons? I mean, do you think it's a cloak or a coat? First of all,
I think it is a coat.
Right.
So a cloak is technically a garment that would always be worn over the shoulder only, but there is a distinct blurring. So, for example, if you go back to kind of Renaissance times, you'll see a lot of Tudors wearing effectively jackets, and you can see, I should say coats as cloaks. However, the arms become sort of atrophied. It's kind of like the vestigial organs of an evolved creature. You see these kind of arms around the side of the cloak. Now, one thing for me, I think that marks out a cloak versus a coat is the length of it. And again, a cloak is always going to be much shorter. While I think this is genuinely just a great coat, which he's wrapped around his shoulders in a cloak fashion. I mean, you would often have like a clasp at the top here. I have quite a few great coats, and I often stomp around with them over my shoulders. And the thing that you find is that they tend to fall off quite a lot. It's quite a hassle to keep them on. So having something at the top to kind of keep it on is...
You need a chain, really, don't you, to stop it from slipping off? Even if it's just for security, even if it's just to give you a feeling of security.
Yeah. And also the lining here as well. So you like the cloak the actual coat would be made of probably a wool with a hard wearing weave. Again, we talked about tweed as the reason why tweed was so popular is that not only is it kind of colourful and a beautiful fabric, but it's also exceedingly hard wearing, and that's what you get with wool. And then you'd have a kind of a nicer, softer lining, but with a cloak, you may have a kind of an internal fur lining as well, rather than just the collar, to make it kind of even more luxurious. Okay, should we move on to number 2 here? The headliner of today's stream.
Yes, I noticed that you made Mao the thumbnail. Quite interesting.
I have to throw off the scent to the YouTube hounds.
Right, I see.
Hence the Soviet one in the third Art of Darkness stream.
Yeah,
I noticed
this.
that.
This channel is now officially
totally
part
balanced.
of BreadTube. This is now a BreadTube channel.
We are a balanced.
I have bisexual lighting in my room right now. If you can't see it.
Oh dear.
I identify as a cape.
Also, I did want to sort of get what's quite good about the dictators is obviously they kind of fall on the left or right spectrum. So I thought we could almost take it back to the original idea as to the various styles. Now, one thing you would say about Mao is that I think he is iconic, isn't he? And one of the reasons why I put the kind of little ceramic is that he, as with all of the kind of heads of the communist canon, become almost saint-like in the material culture that they operate in. You'll have posters like this. You've got ceramics, other goods, but I think one interesting downside of that is that they have to look the same. And we saw this with Lenin. He was wearing his kind of simple bureaucrat's outfit, but you'll see he always wears the same thing. It's in the marketing world. We talk about
Trademark.
There's even more cringe term than that, I'm afraid. The idea of the personal brand, and what you tend to see in large businesses is that CEOs or kind of C-level staff will try and cultivate an image for themselves that will exist outside of the organization. This is literally kind of Burnham's managerial elite 101. And so they build up this idea of the personal brand. Think about Steve Jobs with his polo neck, for example.
Mm-hmm.
It's these kind of iconic looks.
Mark Zuckerberg with his grey t-shirt. T-shirt. Yeah.
I was going to say Mark Zuckerberg with his alien-like face and terrible mannerisms.
God.
But that is actually part of his brand at the same time. But I think the communists understood the power of that kind of personal brand and getting it out there, like a lot of the kind of more right-wing dictators had this almost kind of, I think, natural passion, and they wanted to look good as part of their idea of authority and hierarchy. While I feel like this is a definite choice, and now I believe that you guys can correct me, but this is like a peasant's outfit, just.
I'm not even sure it's that. I think it's just like literally a sort of military-esque boiler suit / tunic that he sort of took on as to look like a simple man. He didn't want to wear a suit, basically. So this was what he went with. Although, funnily enough, it is called the Mao suit, because it is actually a form of suit, because it's a suit if the jacket and trousers match, and the jacket and trousers match, so it's a suit. And of course, it is kind of iconic in its own simple way. But I'm willing to bet that he actually spent or had somebody, do a considerable amount of work making this or coming up with it, to make it look as kind of, as communist as possible. Because the communists love sort of tunics like this, don't they? They adore them because it makes even the sort of highest strung intellectual look sort of down to earth and sort of peasant like.
The Bolsheviks like that.
Yeah, there's a few details. Say, for example, on the top of the top pockets here, you can see this little dip down, and stuff like that is actually a really nice bit of detailing. And again, the stitch work at the top you can see is raised up, showing that it's really high quality. Obviously, these are good buttons. These are the little features you got to look out for. What's your button made out of? Obviously, the cheapest buttons would be a plastic one, but then you've got the kind of natural woods. Like I think coconut's quite popular today. Then you've got kind of the animal. Yeah, well, there's a lot of kind of third world countries will just try and reuse any secondary product. So, say for example, we use a coconut for coconut milk.
And use the husks for matting and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And there's the various nuts and nut casings which are quite popular. Yeah. Then the next tier of button is animal products with like cow horn being, I think, the cheapest one. Then you go up to like bone, which is really nice, but you're getting quite expensive. And then obviously ivory being the most expensive if you can get your hands on them. There's a lot of kind of reclaimed buttons as well these days. But anyway, that's where you can see the kind of quality of the materials, I think.
I do have some deep lore on this. So it says here the modern Chinese tunic suit, originally known as the Zongshan suit or the Mao suit, was actually not invented by Mao. It was invented by the Republican leader Sun Yat-sen, Dr. Sun Yat-sen, who founded the Republic of China, as a form of national dress with distinct political overtones. He based the suit on the Japanese cadet uniform. The 4 pockets are said to represent the 4 virtues of propriety, justice, honesty, and shame. The 5 buttons are the branches of China's government: executive, legislative, judicial, examination, and control. So what do you make of that?
There is another organization that uses buttons around that ideology, and actually that's the Anglican Church.
Really?
Now, you know the 39 articles of faith.
Yes.
There is again, I don't know if this is true or if the bishop was just messing with me at the time, but he said that.
If the bishop was messing with you at the time, you might need to report that to the police.
Oh, terrible.
No, that's a joke. I'm just teasing.
He's in a Maoist sort of mood.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. The spirit of Mao has possessed Alexander. He said that that vicars would button up. Sorry, they basically on their kind of. I've forgotten the name of the actual item, but like the long kind of cloak black outfit that the vicars would wear. But they would button up depending on the number of articles they agreed with, because you know that Anglicanism is often a broad church, and so you'd have a lot of dissenting views. So if you had like 10 buttons undone on this outfit, you would have
subversive, you know.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And if it was falling off entirely, then they need to kick you out, basically. Anyway, I don't know how true that is, but it's a funny story. But I think the actual garments do have 39 buttons on it in a similar way. So also, I like the idea of having like the shame pocket or the honesty pocket.
Yeah, the shame pocket. Well, this is the thing. I wonder if you keep specific things in the specific pockets of the uniform. Like you have to keep like something you're ashamed of in your shame pocket. Like if you have like a pen with like a naughty image on it or something, you put it in the shame pocket.
Yeah. For me, I think let's just quickly compare this to Franco, and again, it's very clean, it's very simple and very very modern. But again, just he's all about the accessories. You see, I've got to mention the gloves in the hand, the little detailing on the jacket here, the little embroidery. Which again just makes it a superior outfit. But interestingly, this style I think has sort of come back. If you see a lot of kind of like middle class urbanites, they have this almost kind of Maoist style clothes where you'll have a traditional formal shape which has just been reduced, and kind of really really pulled back. So his spirit still lingers on today in the fashion world.
I'd also just like to say hello to Lambda in the chat there. He was listening to our discussion on priests and the cassock and the buttons.
Oh, there you go. Cassock, yes, that's what I was thinking of. Yes, thank you. Okay, on to the next. And I've got this. This is actually quite a cool photo I managed to find of Tito.
Yeah.
So obviously communist supreme, but also a bit of a interesting character.
To say the least.
Again, Hats, have you got anything to say about Tito at all?
Well, I don't know very much about him. I know that he came from very humble origins. He was actually like a peasant. He was an educated peasant, but a peasant still. And during the various civil wars during World War II in Yugoslavia, he fought for the communist side, which was technically so you basically the main faction were the monarchists who were supporting the king who had fled the country when the Nazis came. And you also had the communists and other factions as well. And the communists were technically fighting with the monarchists to restore the kingdom as it was. It them being communists and the monarchists being monarchists, they tended to fight each other more than they fought the Nazis. And what happened was, I think it was, I may be wrong here, but basically Winston Churchill forced the ex-king of Yugoslavia to renounce his claim to the throne so that he could instead put Tito in power. And I'm not entirely sure why that was, but again, there's an instance of the subversive Churchill.
The reason why is because there were some journalists on the ground that were commie plants, and they reported back, and there was a number of quite famous BBC articles talking about victories ascribed to the communists that were actually monarchist victories, and actually the monarchists were winning more on the ground. They were doing more. The communists were sort of sitting back, playing it relatively easy. And I don't know how familiar you are with the communist penetration of the Cairo branch.
Yes.
But basically, they were heavily subverted and were just putting all of this kind of like propaganda straight through to London. And Churchill's initially he was supporting the monarchist forces, but after all of these quote unquote victories, flipped to the communists. So he's literally he'd rather support a communist a communist leader over a monarchist one, which I think shows Churchill's true leanings. But enough about this is too political now. This is what about the outfit himself? I mean, Tito he's a character larger than life. I mean, I think to kind of stand up to the USSR and to the US and to try and play them off each other, you got to be quite a feisty character.
Well, I mean, what I think about him is kind of summed up by a meme that I saw, where you have the kind of Marx is like the crying soy jack with all this text around him, like the text of all his books and manifestos, and then you just have a picture of like the Chad Tito, and it just says step 1 IMF loan, step 2 IMF loan, step 3 IMF loan. I mean, he kind of knew how to play Stalin and the West off against each other. I mean, here he looks like he's about to make me an offer I can't refuse. I think sort of sums him up. He was an extremely canny player of the international scene, and he would basically ensure that he was getting like huge amounts of money and weapons and technology from the West, and all this money and weapons and technology from the East as well. You know, whatever he needed, both sides would kind of rush to try and win his favor. But of course, he would just keep playing them off against each other. You know, he would say to Stalin, "Well, look, I need this and this and this," and the West would say, "Ah, well, we'll give you this extra." So Stalin would then have to rush to catch up and say, "Well, I'll give you this much." And of course, as we know, Stalin eventually got sick of him and tried to have him overthrown, I believe, or ousted. And Tito won. He basically faced down Stalin and won. And Stalin then backed off and didn't bother Tito again. So there you go.
And I think you can see this a little bit in his dress as well, because I mean, this is him in uniform. There's quite a few with him in suits as well if you look for various pictures. But this is obviously like a communist officer's uniform. But there's a few little details that I think I've seen a version of this in a Croatian museum. They had some of his outfits there. And I don't know if you can see there's these interesting. It's hard to see in the picture, I'm afraid, but some embroideries on the sleeves, and you've got the kind of laurels either side as well. So some really nice details, but it's almost like halfway between an American outfit or a European outfit and a communist outfit. It's not, again, compare it to Mao, where it's this stripped back. Again, your buttons shows your ideology. He's kind of got these kind of expensive, luxurious details. The gold everywhere. So I wonder if he was intentionally trying to kind of appeal to two different audiences with his style and his look at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's keep moving because we're only down 3. I mean, I put Nasser in here because
I love that picture.
Because of my love of the Orientalists here, but he actually is possibly one of the most boringly dressed.
He is.
Yeah.
But he does have that kind of corrupt Middle Eastern chic, though, doesn't he? You know, like the
that's true.
Suits and sunglasses. It is a look, I think.
Yeah, it's the sunglasses. Yeah, that's definitely the part of the look. But I guess he's kind of trying to show Western appeal at the same time.
I'll tell you somebody that we should have put in if he isn't is his predecessor King Farouk for a dressed leader.
I can. Shall I look him up quickly? Go on.
Yeah, go on. So it's King and then Farouk. King of Egypt and the Sudan from 1922. No, later than that, 1928, I think. Oh, it says here.
Okay.
So is he? This is basically the British
appointee.
Yes.
Not quite. It's a bit more complicated than that. So King Farouk came from the Muhammad Ali line, which was basically in 1811. This Albanian Ottoman sort of governor who was sent to rule Egypt decided to take power for himself and basically set Egypt up as an independent kingdom from the Ottomans. And then what happened was, over time, the British sort of came in and exerted more and more influence over them. And so what happened was you have this basically sort of joint agreement between the royal family of Egypt and the British crown. And obviously the British crown was, the dominant partner of this. But for all intents and purposes, the Egyptians did have their own system of government, and they very much ruled Egypt. But the British were kind of there to sort of make sure that nobody else ruled Egypt, if you see what I mean.
Isn't that technically something like a suzerainty, where the
yes.
colonial has control over foreign policy, but everything else is...
That's the one. That's the one. So Egypt couldn't sort of declare war, and if somebody declared war on them, the British would basically come in and take care of the war for them. This led to some trouble because Farouk was allegedly an Axis sympathizer, and he wanted to bring Egypt into the war on the side of Hitler when the Axis were about to reach Cairo during the war in North Africa before they were turned back. And this was, there was what happened was it got to the point where the British basically pointed a battery of artillery at the palace in Cairo and said, "Well, okay, you've got two options here. You can officially remain neutral, or you can join the Axis and we'll shell the palace." So that didn't come to be. Farouk was also famous for just being a complete hedonist, far more interested in sort of the pleasures of the earth than in ruling. Something he was quite open about.
Just look at these little beady eyes there. He spotted a woman behind the camera.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned his ancestry was Albanian. Well, funnily enough, I think if I can get away with this, he was playing true to his roots. And when Winston Churchill came to visit in 1944, he pickpocketed Winston Churchill's pocket watch because he was a complete kleptomaniac, and it caused an international incident. And apparently, what had happened is he'd had a famous Egyptian pickpocket released from jail on the condition that he showed the king how to do all these pickpocketing tricks. Farouk was married twice. His first wife didn't give him a son. He had like 3 girls with her, so he divorced her, married a 17-year-old Egyptian woman who had to then break off an engagement that she already had in order to marry the king. He then had a son with her who is still alive now and still has quite significant following among Egyptians as the rightful king. Farouk then became notable. He was overthrown in 1952 in a CIA-backed coup because basically Farouk was too much of a loose cannon. Like he obviously wasn't a communist, and he wasn't particularly favorable to the United States. To the USSR. But nevertheless, the Americans wanted rid of him, and they wanted to bring in a military junta to rule the country instead. So they backed a movement of officers in the army who overthrew Farouk in a project which was not so subtly called Operation FF, or Operation Fat Fucker, because Farouk was quite hefty when they took him out. Because he was kind of famous for being this hedonistic playboy with his luxury cars, and he had 1,000 handmade suits, and he was extremely overweight by the time they overthrew him. And then he kind of became even more famous in exile. He moved to Italy and just continued being a sort of gambling playboy, because he was able to get away with most of his money intact. And that's the story of King Farouk. He died sometime in the 60s.
I would like to say to our YouTube overlords that all cultures are beautiful, and I have nothing to add to that commentary.
We love Albanians. I'm going to have to get a T-shirt for hat. Just in terms of the look here, I mean, this is the classic kind of like, trying to emulate the West, but then there's a few kind of Eastern touches as well. The classic fez. There's a sash, but with local colours. And again, I presume that's some kind of local saber as opposed to You can see on the handles quite nice and ornate.
Oh,
But
I would say I think it's quite a good uniform.
yeah, I mean, just
know,
imagine going from this look to this guy. He's going
to a
to
man.
he's going to sell you a Hoover. He's coming.
Yeah,
Around to your house.
exactly. Massive downgrade. I mean, one thing I like about Farouk's era of Egypt was that they kept the fez, and I'm a big fan of the traditional fez. I think the fez looks especially good to me with like a suit. It's a good look, I think. But the trouble is that it became associated with like imperialism and colonialism and sort of tradition, and so most Middle Eastern countries now have it banned. You can't wear it, or it's extremely unpopular to wear it.
Interesting.
You know, which is a shame.
Okay.
And apparently, by the way, that moustache that he has there is the moustache that David Suchet used to create the Poirot moustache.
Interesting. Okay,
That's the inspiration is King Farouk.
He does, just in terms of his look, he does remind me of like.
He does have a Poirot look, doesn't he? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there was something that Farouk said. It was a quote which was like he knew that things were changing in the world in the 50s, and he remarked to a friend, the whole world is in revolt. Soon there will only be five kings left. The king of England, the king of spades, the king of hearts, the king of clubs, and the king of diamonds. And yes, he may well have been right.
Interesting. Okay. Now I've got some African dictators here.
Jean Bedel Bokassa. This is going to turn into a history stream. I'm going to have to explain to everybody who these people are and ramble on about them.
I'm sorry. Go on.
You want me to tell them who Jean Bedel Bokassa was?
Just a real quick overview.
They're not even going to believe this is true, this one. So Jean Bedel Bokassa was a African notary from a kingdom in Central Africa. And when decolonization happened in the late 50s, early 60s, the Central African Republic was created. And it was under a man called David Dacko, who was the president.
So just be clear, these are the old Belgian colonies, aren't they? Is that right? It's
this was French, this one, the Central African Republic, ex-French colony. Basically, because there was some controversy because Dacko was moving towards the Soviet Union for aid and money. And you have to bear in mind, in this period, you don't... When somebody begins to move towards the Russians, it doesn't mean they're a communist per se, but they're basically doing it to get leverage over the West because they want more. The communists are offering them more than the West is offering them. However, this did not go down well with the French and the Americans, who basically still had, most of the control over the country. And so they backed a coup by this chap, Jean Bedel Bokassa, who had fought in the French army in World War II and in Vietnam. No, that was too early. Sorry, he hadn't fought in Vietnam. And in Korea, I think he'd fought in.
It might be in Indochina.
Yes, quite possibly. But he'd fought in Asia for the French army, and so he was back. And he was head of the Central African Republic Army at the time. And so he staged a coup, declared himself president, and then shortly after, he decided that he wanted to make himself emperor of the Central African Republic in the same way that Napoleon made himself emperor of France. And he had this kind of idol complex around Napoleon, which is why all the things you see here are... I was
going to say, the golden laurel wreath at the top, these ridiculous... Yes. This is like straight out of high 19th century nobility. There's a specific order, isn't there, that can wear these?
The Académie Française wears them.
Right.
Those sorts of tunics. Yes, and if you pop back to the other picture there, the one of him in his coronation. So yes, he declared himself the Emperor of Central Africa, Central African Empire, and it's difficult to really believe this happened, but he spent 1/3 of the country's entire GDP on his coronation ceremony alone. And that eagle you see there, that is a solid gold eagle, which costs or near however close you can get to a solid gold eagle at that size. But basically, yes, this costs the earth in terms of that country's GDP. He invited a number of world leaders, none of whom came because why? Why would you go to this? Everybody thought it was a laughing stock, but it did ultimately win the country some more international relevance in a sort of strange way. And he wasn't especially unpopular either. This seemed to go somewhat well for a few years. And then he started to get a bit mad, like some African dictators do. You know, he sort of got up to some rather unsavory activities. He may have indulged in some cannibalism. You know, as casual sort of Central African dictators seem to do that. And then the French, after like 3 years of him being emperor, decided that they didn't want this going on in their sort of ex-empire anymore. So they sent in some Marines who overthrew him and replaced him with his cousin, the ex-president, David Dacko, who then ruled for another like 20 years, thus ending the Central African Empire. And he also did these bizarre things, like his wife was a kind of wannabe fashion designer. And so he decreed that all school uniforms in the country had to be the ones that his wife had designed herself, which featured an embroidered image of the two of them on it. And these uniforms cost the equivalent of £300 in a country where the average yearly wage is only about £100. And this was massively unpopular. So one day, while he was driving around the capital in his limo, a mob of school children like rushed the car and started demanding that he repeal this law about school uniforms. So he reached out the sunroof and started to beat them with his cane, and then like drove off. And this basically was like the final straw, and then the people were quite happy when he was overthrown. Not long after.
And did you hear about how he got his revenge on France?
No, go on.
Oh, it's the affair of the diamonds, which actually came up in this book that I mentioned earlier, Diplomatic Gifts, because one of the 50 gifts is diamonds, which he gave to d'Estaing, the French president. And d'Estaing didn't declare this, or didn't declare the full value of these gifts.
Oh, good.
Bokassa was deposed. He went on he did a big interview with French TV and said, "I've got the receipts. I gave him millions of pounds worth of diamonds."
Brilliant.
And, maybe you ought to ask him about that. And d'Estaing lost the presidential elections that were happening at that time.
Wow!
And that's how Mitterrand came to power. So,
incredible.
I mean, just in terms of Bokassa's look here, I mean, firstly, just love his expression. He's just a happy guy. When you see all of his, all of the pictures of him, he's just loving life. But and again, one of the reasons why I put him in here is that he's not just your normie, like aping after Europe dictator. He takes
this guy goes
up to
all
the
the
next
way.
level. He's already takes it to the max. Then he goes a little bit higher. Like who no one's worn like a golden laurel wreath since literally Napoleon, and he's just doing it. He's
so happy about it too.
Yeah, exactly. He's in his golden throne with a big bee on the background. I mean, one thing I would say, this is possibly one of the ugliest eagle sculptures I've ever seen in my life. It's like a fat pigeon.
Yeah, it's a bit much, isn't it?
It's not well done, but
his
outfits are great.
I know we really don't have time for this, but there is on the internet somewhere a wonderful short piece of footage of the coronation that somebody took. That it's so surreal. It's so surreal. It's if you want to watch like 10 seconds of it, it's worth it. But again, I don't know if we have time.
If you can find it, we could.
Okay, I'll see if I can get the link.
Okay. Here we go. Just another classic one. There's some just great photos. This is him with this kind of French admiral's hat here. I don't think there is a French outfit that he hasn't like taken and then just taken to the nth degree. Like I think you have stars for your generalship or whatever, and he's just added with extra ones basically.
I love his wife looking like some Beverly Hills like trophy wife there, though. Not really in keeping, is she? No,
exactly. But yeah, brilliant guy. Now on to another classic look. Now, I'm going to say, obviously, this is actually from the film version, but I couldn't find a picture of Idi Amin wearing a kilt. But I just had to put this in there as a notable weirdness. Do you know much about Idi at all?
I do. I know a great deal about Idi Amin, King of Scotland. But I found the clip on Daily
hold on a
Motion
second.
if you want to just watch a few seconds. Also, the music they used is the piano trio, the Schubert piano trio. You know, dun 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 dun, dun from used in Barry Lyndon, and it's got it gives it this wonderfully kind of sarcastic tone. The whole footage. So I don't think it would get copyrighted. So. I don't want to stress your computer any harder. Apologies.
This is pushing it to the limit right now.
Yeah, it's probably like chuffing smoke out of the vents. And...
You could delete some of your used tabs. Might help a little bit.
I like reference.
Yeah, we might want to hop back to Franco, to Tito.
Okay, I mean this is loading. When this is loaded, we'll switch back to it, baby. Come on, Iddy, give us some facts.
I think this guy was kind of base, just saying, Picasso. Anyway, so yes, this is, as you say, this is the still from the film with Forrest Whitaker playing Idi Amin. But yes, Idi Amin did dress like this because he, well, I mean, before I go into his origin, he kind of had this obsession with Scotland. You know how you get like weebs who are like obsessed with Japan. Well, this guy was like the Ugandan equivalent of a weeb, but for Scotland. Basically, he adored Scottish kind of regalia and culture, and he often said that he would love to have been a Scot if he wasn't a Ugandan. So he was a I think he was a fairly low-born African. He was not born in Uganda, actually. He was born in what is now Kenya, I believe. But nevertheless, he was this kind of huge brute of a man. He was like 6'3". He was very broadly built, and he took part. He joined the King's African Rifles, the colonial regiment, which I have some ancestors who were in that. He basically worked his way up to being a sergeant in that, and he was known for being an amazing rugby player, an amazing boxer. He was this kind of very authoritarian brute, and he fought in the Mau Mau rebellion. He helped crush the Mau Mau rebellion, and he was selected as a candidate to be an officer for when the British were sort of decolonizing the region. That they would basically make several of the upper ranks of the King's African Rifles officers in the new army, and he was chosen. And from the get-go, he was sort of seen to be kind of far too stupid is too harsh of a word, more kind of just reckless and a bit daft. I know that there was this one ex-colonel of the British Army who was talking about Idi Amin, and one of the things they had to show the new officers how to do was to open a bank account. So he took Idi Amin to the bank in the capital, and he showed him how to open a bank account. And then before he'd even put any money in it, Idi Amin went out and bought several new suits, a car, and a whole bunch of other like sort of nice things. So he was immediately like, thousands of pounds into his overdraft. Sort of things like that, sort of a hallmark of the fact that perhaps this caste they were bringing up was not quite suited to run a country. But nevertheless, Uganda was ruled by a man called, I think it was Milton Obote. And then he became unpopular and was, again, like Bokassa's predecessor, he was moving towards the Soviets. So Idi Amin overthrew him in a coup. He was a general by that point, and a very popular one. He would always go around and make lots of speeches to the people, and he was not an ineffective ruler at first. He was quite capable of making good on promises. He was quite beneficial to the economy because he didn't do anything to it. He didn't meddle in it, and he seemed to be doing quite well. And then all of a sudden, he started to slide into paranoia and madness, and he began to do all these completely odd things. And that chap you see there next to him, who in the film is played by James McAvoy, he was a Scottish doctor who traveled to Uganda, basically on like a young doctor having an adventure in Africa. And he ended up becoming friends with Idi Amin because Idi Amin found out there was a real live Scotsman in the country. So he sort of invited him to the palace, and they hung out all the time. And he wrote a book about the experience, which the book Last King of Scotland is based on. And Idi Amin. I mean, Idi Amin. All I'll say is, if you watch that original Dictator Top Trump stream that AA did with the Britisher and Sargon of Akkad, there's a bit in that where AA is like reading info, and he says, "Somebody in the chat here says he ate his wife," and I mean that does kind of sum Idi Amin up. He was accused many times of practicing cannibalism and witchcraft, and he started a war with Tanzania, which he lost. He was known to be extremely corrupt and decadent, and I mean, this picture tells you everything you need to know. That's kind of what he was like. And then he ended up being overthrown, and he died in 2003, I think, quite recently. That's Idi Amin.
Yeah, and then I mean, just in terms of his look, obviously, it's not just the kind of Scottish kilt, but there's lots of kind of suits. But this is obviously kind of what he's famous for. But again, I like that. I like how you put it. The kind of weeaboo for Scotland.
He was. And in fact, he I think partly it was because he viewed both Scotland and Uganda as being oppressed by the English. He sort of saw them as having this common thing. And when just another random anecdote, really, but it was reported that there was a famine in his country, and it was reported on the British press, and so in revenge, even because of its massive campaign, took all this food off starving peasants, put it into a convoy of trucks, and called it the Save Britain Fund. He was going to send all this food to the starving people in Britain that he'd heard of.
That's some good trolling. Good trolling.
Yeah.
Okay.
Once again, want to add that all cultures are beautiful.
All cultures are beautiful and equal.
There's been a lot of cannibalism so far.
That's what happens in Central Africa.
Right now.
Oh no!
I had to put in.
You're going to do the talking for this one, Farrow.
I mean, I don't know a huge amount about the Garbage Pass, but I just love this. There's a couple of outfits I've got, but this is just exceptional.
Before we move on to him, do you want to see if that footage of the
the
coronation is loaded?
Yeah. Let's see if my potato internet. Okay. See, it's literally taking me about half an hour to do a privacy cookie notification.
Yeah, just like a button. Oh. Bear with us, everyone. I don't know. Maybe we'll have to show. Well,
the footage is just too powerful.
Maybe you can upload.
The lag is going to be comparable to your Christmas advert stream.
That was pretty. Oh, we have to literally go for an ad. I don't have an ad blocker.
All right, let's turn this off. I'll find another way. Maybe you could upload the video to your channel.
Oh, hold on a second. Here we go.
Oh, it's loaded. Oh, well, I recommend that you keep the sound on because the piano is.
I don't think I've shared my.
Okay, no worries. Yes, that was Bokassa's son there, the Crown Prince, who is still alive and still agitates for the cause of returning to the monarchy in Central Africa. There's this great carriage. I don't know if you can see that huge state carriage that they had. And in proper tradition, the emperor and his wife had their own carriage, and the crown prince had his own carriage. I mean, these were sort of bespoke, handmade European state carriages. These cost enormous amounts of money. Actual European carriage making.
I love he's just literally yawning.
He's having his gloves taken off. Yeah, he's amazingly calm for a kid. If you were being crowned Pharaoh and you had to have like a separate carriage for Pharaoh, like, do you think she'd be this calm?
No, she would be freaking out right now. He's actually pretty chilled out about the whole thing. I love this. Is literally 90% glove based.
Glove based. Just
Glove based
well, they have to do it in a certain way, don't they?
Here they come.
Yeah.
Oh, is it like a?
Oh, there's the children there.
I like seeing in the background of some of these, and you'll see the occasional white guy, and I just assume that there's some kind of like corrupt leftovers from Empire or something like that.
Possibly.
Or a mercenary, or probably undercover security guard.
Yeah.
He's not very
True.
undercover.
There were
South
also
Africa.
quite a lot of press who were very eager to see this firsthand, because why wouldn't you be? Okay, but yeah, there you go. I mean, that gives you enough of the vibe of madness.
Yeah. Okay, we'll pause it there.
All
We'll send around the link afterwards so people can check it out. Oh, let's start. Okay, hold on a second. Start again. Oh my goodness! Literally.
Oh.
This is the best TV right now, isn't it? This is the best stream.
Your computer's gonna just like crack open in a minute, isn't it?
You're gonna need to delete that tab, aren't you?
Okay. No, it's giving up the ghost to get out. Right. I'm drawing a line on it. We'll send it round. We'll send
the link round.
Mugabe, insane man. But what I love about him is I just want to talk about just like African prints, because I'm quite interested in them as like from a fashion perspective.
Yeah.
So you may have seen the kind of very colourful West African prints that you get, and those are all from a variation of batik. If you've ever heard that term before, otherwise known as Dutch wax process. And this is actually, I think it's originally from I'm going to say Indonesia.
Yes, correct.
Where the Dutch kind of encountered this kind of local fabric dyeing technique, and what you basically do is to paint patterns in wax, and then to through a series of dyeing and melting the wax, build up patterns in process. And so if you can actually, they actually sell. In fact, if you ever see like a West African wedding or christening or other kind of service, you'll often find these kind of extremely bright, colourful, very graphic prints, and those are typically done through this kind of batik process. So it started off in Indonesia. The Dutch got it; they started to use it, and then they sort of sold it to the kind of West Africans. But interestingly, they kind of adapted it, and I think what's fascinating for me is like how they kind of evolved the medium. So again, some of my favourite West African batik works will just weave really random things in there. Like I found in one market an electric fan being used as part of like the print pattern. So it was like a repeated electric fan, or one was like a flag, like the flag of a nation. And again, like if you think about how we wear patterns and designs in the West, if someone turned up in like a British outfit or whatever, like head to toe in British flags, you think they're there for a sporting event or something like that. But it's just kind of part of the kind of culture, certainly from like a color perspective, and also like a cultural perspective. Like these bright colors, and so you've got this kind of history of, obviously Zimbabwe is not West Africa, but there is this kind of traditions of print-based fabrics, which is what this is here. So this is a Mugabe in a suit, but then you've got these super mega bright colors, which also kind of match the colors of the Zimbabwean flag, and then you've got things like a digital print of his own younger face, ZANU PF, which is obviously the political party he's part of. So it's this kind of, but it's a weird kind of like showing your tribal colors in a very vivid way, that is amusing, and also I find interesting at the same time. Like we saw how Mao had, like there was ideology in the clothes, but it was translated into buttons or something. It's about subtlety and simplicity. While Mugabe is literally wearing his ideology on his sleeve, literally.
He looks like one of those racing drivers where they've got all the logos. It looks as though he's sponsored by Disarming PF.
Some people in the chat have been pointing that out, and somebody said this isn't Mugabe. Actually, it's Lewis Hamilton in 2057.
Well, the politics are not far off.
Yeah.
One final touch that I thought which made this perfection is, of course, his signature in the beret, which just made me chuckle. So again, I like the fact. Jacket. I love that this is sort of like a meta self-referencing jacket. Yeah. It sort of reminded me a little bit of like a 1930s modernist, what's it called? Composition, like mixed media composition or something like that. It's where you're slapping kind of pictures and graphic work all together, and text. And any comments?
You need to turn up to the next event like this and just have your face on the jacket and your signature on the beret. Just please.
Yeah, but I would say that's quite a left wing thing, though, don't you think? That very bold pattern, the slogans and stuff actually on the clothing. I think only someone from the left would do that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like you'd maybe have. I'm just trying to think of some of the right movements of the mid-century. You'd have an armband. You'd have an association with a colour. So you've obviously got the Mussolini's black shirts, or I quite like the blue shirts in Ireland. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Yes,
they have a very distinctive look. But again, it's about subtlety. It is all about the dog whistle. While I think you're right, this is a very left wing, but it's interesting because it's obviously it's not from that kind of Maoist branch, is it really? Or I don't know where some of this stuff comes from. But
I think of it as a very South African thing, this sort of thing, because for example, if you look at the MPs that the African National Congress have, they don't wear suits in Parliament. They wear like red, like they look like sort of like students on a protest. These like big red jackets. And like red overalls and like red shirts. They all wear this big sort of one color. You know exactly who those MPs are because of the clothes they're wearing, for example. I just think it's something from that region that's especially notable. I am a bit disappointed by his just like standard black tie. You think if you're going to wear a jacket like that, you'd
maybe he's speaking at a funeral.
Oh, that's possible.
I've got another one here.
The funeral of good taste, maybe.
Oh no, this is literally so sad. It's worth waiting for. We may have to come back for this one, I'm afraid. Okay, let's keep on going for the sake of time. Now, let's move on to another absolute dictator, fashion icon, Gaddafi here.
Gaddafi. Well, I didn't know if you meant his friend there.
Well, also
Ceausescu.
Yeah, Ceausescu. Yes. I've been to Ceausescu's house. It's literally terrible. It's unsurprisingly the worst taste possible.
The palace or his home?
It's I think it's I think it was his home. It's like his mansion outside of the but it was pretty tacky, and they had a big cinema as well, which made me laugh. It was kind of like a McMansion.
Well, do you remember they built that huge palace that was like the largest palace in the world, and it's so big that they only use like a third of it now. It's like it's completely unusable.
I've seen it. It's pretty tremendous. It's very, very deep down. That's what I remember. And
right.
Hold on a second.
But anyway, we're here to talk about Colonel Gaddafi.
No, wait a second. I think the Mugabe's back here.
Oh,
it's just such a powerful image.
Yeah, the power of
close your old tabs, Pharaoh, please.
Oh. No, because he needs to jump back and forth. Do you remember his speech at the event? He was doing that. He was like jumping between slides and going. It's a very slick presentation.
It's the narrative storytelling. There we go.
Oh, he looks like a lemon.
But again, you can see just some of these like weird graphical motifs. I couldn't work out. It's like a man holding some corn, and I just love that idea of the kind of African mind, just thinking, well, just love embracing that you can put anything on a graphic. And again, it's a man holding some maize,
Yeah.
and I'm going to turn that into my entire outfit. But then I'm going to combine it with this brilliant yellow color, and then the signature beret. I wonder if you could buy these, like a Mugabe's signature beret.
You're already on the lookout for one, Pharaoh.
Yeah. Oh, I'm looking out.
You're going to be like
I'll have some kind of museum, some kind of cabinet of curiosities of various knickknacks that I've picked up. Again, I think the Mugabe look is not finished without the M&S tie now.
Yeah, really cheap tie. Standard white shirt, cheap tie with that jacket.
Yeah.
Do you think the trousers match? Do you think the trousers go with it?
No. I think it's just a jacket. I think it's just a jacket from what I've seen. He always dressed relatively strangely, I think, from seeing some photos of him.
He did, yes.
And again, yes, the gold. It's some good accessorization there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 4 pens, maybe a little bit too much.
He's a busy man.
And the pocket square. He's got like a half pocket square there.
Yeah, you can barely see.
That's an outrage. This is a disgrace. What's going on here?
Well, as you say, M&S tie and matching square set. That's what it is.
Exactly. To be fair, I mean, he's probably signing other people's berets, so.
He's signing death warrants.
That's also true. Okay.
Although it's a beautiful culture, of course.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Tell me about Gaddafi. I'm sure you know.
I don't know a huge amount about Gaddafi. I know that he came to power in the coup that overthrew the king of Libya. In like the fifth. Was it that long ago? No, it can't have been that long ago. I think it was the early 60s or so. And then he ruled up until 2011 when he was overthrown by Hillary Clinton. Basically, he was. I mean, to be honest, like I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that he was actually one of the more based leaders of the last 100 years. I actually think the reason that the West tended to vilify him towards the end was because he was basically an enemy of the current elites we have. He did not want his country to be ruled by banks and be constantly indebted to the IMF or have WEF pause in his country. He was very keen on keeping the Libyan oil in at least his hands, if not his country's hands, and not letting Western tappers get to it. I am simplifying things a lot here, of course, but I do think that actually his method of keeping his country kind of nationalistic and staying its own course was quite admirable. That's all I know that he has his downsides as well, but I think that's.
Well, he was supposed to be. He was set himself up as a pan-Arab leader, and he had his green book, which was going to be sort of a combination of socialism and Islam. That was going to sort of be the ideological foundation for a pan-Arab network, which never quite materialized. But he had sort of aspirations towards that.
It didn't pan out.
No, but he did write some very interesting books talking about what he wanted to do with Libya, and he talked about how he wanted to have this big Islamic revival. He wanted to move the kind of the philosophical axis of his country to the older books of the Quran, and he actually angered a lot of conservative Muslims despite that, because he wanted to reject the hadith, the sayings of the Prophet. And he began to introduce Sharia law. You could be punished by flogging if you committed adultery or were homosexual. I mean,
interesting.
I won't. That's all I'll say. But yes, he became very socially conservative and quite powerful sort of autocrat. I mean, basically, I just see him as like a traditional Middle Eastern king. He was quite a wise, prudent ruler in many ways. He was very popular for the entirety of his rule, right up until the end, basically. And it was another astroturfed CIA Clinton fiasco that took him out.
it's interesting how long he lasted. I think I mean, it's a
Long
testament
time.
to at least his skills as a controller of people or elites.
I mean, he was born when Libya was still an Italian colony, and he saw it basically go from that to a monarchy, and he came to power in 1969. He was the leader of the coup, and he was quite a good looking man, wasn't he? When he was a younger, he was a noted best looking man on the street.
We've got the several phases of Gaddafi. There's so much gold that I had to separate out, and this is what I would describe as the early years, the handsome years. It's a classic. It's a classic uniform dictator. This is before he's sampled the delights of total power and ruling. I had a question around the uniforms there, because it kept looking like he was wearing British Army uniforms.
Yeah,
I didn't know about that, because I thought that it was, like you said, it was an Italian colony, but I wondered after the Second World War that we ended up with it or something.
I think they just adopted British military styles. I mean, clearly, you can see even the man behind him is wearing the old style khaki tunic. It's that's just what they adopted. I don't especially know why, or if it's possible to find out why.
It's interesting, and again, even the caps and stuff, you can see this.
Similar very similar to the British military cap.
This is lean Gaddafi. Okay, this is Gaddafi.
10
years in power.
Apparently, Francis Bacon said the two most handsome men in the world were Terence Stamp and Colonel Gaddafi.
Now he sampled a little bit of power. Just noticed the epaulet growth here. This is
quite soon. I think those are the biggest epaulets we've seen actually on this series. I think he gets the crown for that.
Exactly, and then the little medal marks across here on the top.
Ribbons.
And then the jaunty hat. It's a great look. The khaki and red. But I just love that this is a sign of things to come here.
I actually think he should have stuck with this look. I think this look has something going for it. Because I think he should have he should have made himself like the king of Libya, like literally. He should have just declared himself to be a monarch like the other chapter, and just like ruled and established like a dynasty. I think he honestly had the chops for it. He could have done it. He could have been a very good hardcore king, Islamic king.
Did he not have any children at all?
I think he did. There's a picture on his Wikipedia page with him with a young boy, so I presume that's his son.
Interesting. And again, you can see that the outfits are sort of based, like the rest of the outfits are based on British uniforms again. So you can see either side, again, the berets. But his is kind of like French, I would say, or maybe Italian.
What it is, it's partly related to the French Zauve. The Zauve was the light infantry regiment of the French army, which came from North Africa. So that would have included some people from Libya, I guess. Yeah. So it's related to the Zauve uniform.
There we go. That's a great factoid there. Thank you. Okay, and then moving on to this is like high Gaddafi here. This is.
We need to show this to AA. We need to have him here for this, because he would be creaming himself right now at this.
This is where he's abandoned the kind of military aspirations. He's getting in touch with his local ethnic background. He's got the mob of people behind him, including what looks like Tom Jones, like Libyan Tom Jones.
Maybe. I mean, Pharaoh. Come on, is this not pretty based? Just strolling around like this.
It's a great. You need to have the entourage. Like if it's just you by yourself, you look utterly mad.
But didn't when he came to give a speech at the UN, they allowed him to set up a Bedouin tent in Central Park or something?
Yes, that's right. He lived in a Bedouin tent with a train of camels in Central Park. And there's another story. He was on a state visit to Rome. And he insisted while he was there that he be given that a group of supermodels be collected, all of whom must be virgins, and they must go to the University of Rome, where they went into a lecture theatre and sat down, and he lectured them for 2 hours on the Quran, and then left. That's something he did.
Wow.
I mean, it's a great.
Apparently, the chat is saying that he had 10 children, including some adopted. And I think, wasn't it the death of one of his adopted children that was who was killed in the American air raid? I think that was a cause, or didn't die. There was some confusion over that, but that was a sort of cause célèbre.
Yes, his son, one of his eldest sons, was thought to have been killed in America. Well, it's not clear. There's people say he's still alive now, but he was killed in an American air raid allegedly, and yeah, that's what finally sort of snapped the morale of Gaddafi's army.
Just in terms of
no, this was back in the 80s.
Oh right, okay.
It was a child who was in. I think it was a child who he claimed was his adopted child who was in the hospital,
right?
Which was apparently bombed by the Americans by Reagan back in the late 80s, I believe it was, in revenge for the Lockerbie bombing or something, which apparently wasn't Libya at all. So,
thanks, CIA. In terms of the outfit, obviously you got this kind of North African kaftan-esque robe. I imagine John Dee flounces around his artistic home in something similar to this,
while wearing clogs.
While wearing clogs, exactly.
Yeah, I think John Dee is significantly taller than Gaddafi.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Okay, and then we've got late stage Gaddafi, where he kind of comes back into reliving the younger years. He's trying to reclaim some of the capture. He's brought the epaulets back. He's given himself more rewards than ever. But you can tell it's not looking good. I mean, look at the state of this sash right here. This is an absolute disgrace.
The trouble is, it looks like a costume shop Gaddafi uniform. It looks like if you're going to a party as him, you'd wear that. Basically,
look at this. This is great look.
Yeah, return to that. Basically, don't try and do this.
The fit is also very bad. It looks like way too big in the sleeves.
Sleeves are too long and too big.
I think he had some peculiar sort of degenerative condition towards the end. I think, which affected his body.
And then also we couldn't finish here without talking about the Amazonian Guard. Which also matched him as well, which I quite liked the fact that
he's got
an entire regiment there,
color coordinated, and also he insisted that they were all virgins. Those female guards, all of them virgins. I don't know what to believe, but I mean, he was quite keen on his Islamic law, so maybe they were.
Well, didn't he have Ukrainian female bodyguards or something? Who was that? Wasn't that Gaddafi as well?
I think that may have been him as well. He loved packs of women running around after him as bodyguards.
Brilliant. Okay, one last thing in terms of Gaddafi was this hand created pistol that he had that I thought would include just in terms of accessories again. Now the worst thing about this is that someone's put a gigantic Made in Belgium on the side. Now I don't want to slight the Belge followers. I respect Belgium a lot, but why would you have a gigantic Made in Belgium sign on the side?
Maybe it was presented to him by a Belgian. Now the Belgians are one of the world's biggest arms dealers. So there's a good reason for you to sort of, if you are a Belgian, to sort of promote the arms trade to someone who is going to buy a lot of weapons from you.
Yeah. That does make sense. And then you can see obviously there's an Islamic inscription across here for a specific verse. This is all etching work, isn't it? So have you ever seen the process where shotguns are made? I think it's a combination of engraving and acid etching.
Yes, I think so.
I'm sure Alexander, you probably know.
Yeah, so I mean, the print making business where you have etchings and engravings, which is where you have a metal sheet and then you cut the design into it and then you rub ink over it and it stays in the grooves. That actually came from the ornamentation of armor. So the chasing in armor would be done by someone with a gouge, and you would have these fantastic floral designs and sweeping curlicues and so forth. And people noticed, you could actually you could actually fill these grooves with stuff, and so that's how printmaking came about. So this sort of design was actually originally came from armor and weapons ornamentation on those.
So it's kind of quite a trad, a trad.
Yeah. So
word,
this was happening in medieval times that you had this. This is where it originated.
I like the idea that someone like ran into a knight and then had the opposite image stamped into their face or something like that, and that's where they worked out they could use for printing.
Something like that, yes.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, I was running quite low on the dictator, so I just put Ataturk in there. I thought quite a strong look, and he also I didn't realise how much he reminded me of Clement Attlee as well. I thought.
Well, the trouble with Ataturk is, of course, the only reason he's dressed like this is to look like Western and like French, and to not look Turkish, which I think is like deeply wrong, basically, because he basically robbed Turkey of all its traditions, and he just wanted to make Turkey into like Third Republic France. That was his dream. That was his goal.
And this was the Edwardian era, wasn't it? So he's dressed sort of
a bit after. This was the 20s and the early 30s. Ataturk, but I mean, yeah, he is basically wearing Edwardian formal fashions because the political sphere is doesn't adapt that quickly, does it? It takes a bit. So yeah, he's still wearing. Well, the thing is, he wanted to look like kind of a sort of Western gentleman, so that's why he kept on with these stiff collars and morning suits and top hats and striped trousers and all sorts of things.
I've got a slightly more ethnic Ataturk there with the goat skin.
I think that's a good. I would dress like that. Honestly, I've been talking to Semi-Gog for a while now, trying to get hold of like a hat like that, like a Turkish or like Caucasian winter hat. Because they look good with a suit and coat. They really do. They're quite fitting. I'd love to get something like that. Yes.
Also, love this guy as well. Just
Is it the sort of thing you'd wear to Waitrose, though? I'm not sure.
I'm implying that I shop at Waitrose.
Well, I was thinking as high class as possible. You see, that was.
No,
you began to an independent store.
No, Panama visits his farmers, which give him products from the land. That's
no. Sorry, they deliver to him. Sorry, they deliver to him.
There's a great
tithing shed. There's a tithing. Was it a tithing barn?
Where they bring their grain, and eggs, and meats, and gold, and they deposit it in the tithing barn.
And you're dressed like Bukasa, with a golden eagle behind you.
Yeah. It cost me 1/3 of my yearly expenditure. That eagle.
It's worth it. Worth every penny. Okay, who have you got here? I'm sorry. More images. Okay. While this loads up, we'll go straight to Pol Pot.
I want to say, Farah, you're handling this potato internet very well. You're,
I'm sorry.
Putting up with it.
I just want to apologise to the audience. Pol Pot. I mean, he's obviously like Dr. Evil, isn't he? I mean,
what can we say about Pol Pot, Farah? I mean,
but what interested me was, again, he's following that similar Maoist style of like slightly nativist, but then super stripped back, plain. But actually, there's a lot of quality in the garment. So again, like the quality of fabric and the stitching and stuff like that, you can tell it's a really well made and fitted garment. So in some ways, it would actually be very expensive if you were to try and make something similar to this in the UK. But it's interesting in my mind about that split between the kind of communist and kind of more right-leaning or hierarchical, where they tend, certainly in the East, to switch into these simplified modes. But there's a kind of like, they still spend quite a lot of cash on the items at the same time. But I mean, Pot's just a horrific man. No charisma.
So I can imagine him. You can just imagine the mouth starting to waggle, and he says, "You will own nothing, and you will be happy."
But I mean, that is unironically what he would have said. Like
yes,
he wanted you to own nothing and be happy. I mean,
Yeah.
just remember, everybody, this is what we're dealing with now.
The Great Reset.
Yeah, the Great Reset. I mean, Pol Pot killed anybody who had a wristwatch, anybody who owned a typewriter, anybody who could read. You know,
Anyone
like
who wore glasses.
anyone who wore glasses, anybody who wore a tie, like it just utter just catastrophic madness. And of course, he was a student of Jean-Paul Sartre. He used to go and attend Sartre's lectures in Paris in the 60s, and he was apparently quite an attentive pupil. And as it's pointed out in the Bowden lecture on him, the name Pol Pot is actually sort of a joke, because that wasn't his actual name. It was an acronym that was written down by communist agents because they thought he had political
Potential, isn't it?
potential. Pol Pot, that's the acronym.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Who is this? Oh my goodness, we've received a hand. A
Got a hand.
tantalising
That's one thing.
Can you guess which dictator
Name a
this is?
political leader with a hand.
This is like being on the internet in like 2003 with like a dial-up where you have to wait for the image to like slowly. Oh, there we go. Hey.
you know what? I had a whole lot of Mussolini, and I've actually taken it out because we did cover him last time. So
Okay.
so I put a whole lot of addition.
Base Benito Mussolini.
Oh my goodness, this is just not working. This is so annoying. Okay, I'm reloading the tabs.
Okay.
Kim Jong. I wanted to put someone modern in there, and again, just the. This was like a before and after, and apparently.
What happened to him? He looks very different.
Yeah, he's lost some weight apparently.
Didn't he? He apparently went into a coma, and there was this whole idea that his sister had taken over.
And then a bunch of people started to simp over the sister because she's like supposedly attractive and like young.
I know, and no, unironically, because she was the first female dictator of North Korea. That's what feminists were supporting her.
So progressive. I'm just thankful. I'm behind that. I'm still waiting for. There surely has been an LGBTQ plus, aka dictator before.
Has there?
Well, there's an opportunity there. Please. You'll get.
I'm trying to think who might have been, slightly bent and also a dictator. I can't really. I mean, given what some of those leaders in Africa got up to, I wouldn't put it past them to do that as well. I mean, if you're going to eat a person, what's off limits?
Answers in comments. We will check the comments next time and get back. Also, I saw this one of King Jong-un as well, which made me laugh so hard because it's got like thinner hands, straighter hairline, rosier complexion.
Do you think he's been replaced by a double?
Well, I don't know. This one definitely looks like a double, doesn't it? It looks like someone different.
Same, does he?
But just I love the idea of this kind of them kind of simping after the.
But don't they have to like remodel the ears, because the ears are just like impossible? They're like fingerprints that you can't
really
and duplicate them. Yeah.
I'm now looking. I mean, they're
to be fair, those do look like his ears.
Yeah.
I would, that's fair.
What do you think of the look?
I mean, it's basically just a mouse suit, isn't it?
Yeah.
But just on a very fat man. This is like if like Baz from down the pub was wearing a mouse suit. That's what this looks like.
Absolute unit.
Yeah, absolute unit. I mean,
do you think someone's inflated him or something?
Well, it looks like they've let a bit of air out on the right. But I mean, it just looks sort of terrible. But at the same time, it's his look. Like it's like the terrible haircut and the terrible glasses and the terrible face. It's his. Would you call it for a personal brand? Is that the?
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
There you go. It's his personal brand. You can't mistake him for anyone else, can you?
So he's basically an SJW feminist undergraduate, basically.
Well, yeah, but I mean that's what you have, and I mean there was one picture of him where he was wearing like a suit and a coat, and he had like a fedora, and he looked like a sort of like a sort of Reddit atheiist who was like stepping out of a car.
Let's see if we can find it.
I've got you to open another tab now. So it's gonna crash the stream again.
Maybe a while. Oh, here we go. It's a great look.
Yeah, there it is. Look at that, tipping that fedora.
Tips fedora.
Milady.
Brilliant.
There's a man who respects women.
The last person I had on this list was Che. I don't know if this is going to load up. The tab has killed me.
Well, to be fair, we have an advantage because everybody knows what Che Guevara looks like, don't we?
Yeah.
We don't. We can sort of start talking about him.
Go on then.
Memory test.
I mean, the thing is about Che is that it's all in the face, isn't it? Like, it because he had that kind of rugged look that makes, like, you know, hippie students cream themselves. You know, him and Fidel. You know, they both have that kind of rugged masculinity. Ironically enough, you know, when all these students are like, oh, you know, masculinity is evil, but you know that they're there like fantasizing about Che and Fidel. You know, with their like rugged jungle charm and their like huge Cuban cigars and military uniform. I mean, look how much chest he's showing there. You know, I mean,
yeah,
also
no shirt.
Yeah, I mean, I will say for Che Guevara, he may have been a filthy communist, but he did kind of embody a certain like Younger-esque, like sort of masculine heroic energy. Like he was no coward, you know. Like he knew what he wanted to do and he got it done, and he wasn't afraid to do bad things to get there. When they were going to kill him, he just said, "Shoot me, you will only kill a man." And I know that he had particularly harsh views on homosexuals and certain minorities, shall we say? This man could have been quite a based hero, but he was a communist.
And again, I think that kind of shows in his outfit again, where a lot of the ideologically like theory communists coming out with. Again, that kind of that Mao style. Well, again, he's going for the military. It's about power. It's about, you know, showing your strength and masculinity through your outfits. Although even then, it's a very stripped back look, where again he's not. There's no kind of epaulets or kind of fancy things like you said. This is a guerrilla warrior. You know, a simple infantryman that's in a position of power. The kind of, you know, the
comfortable, practical.
Literally, like Lambda's beard.
Lambda's got a better beard
Lambda's
than
got a
that.
better beard than that.
Lambda's got a magnificent
I said he's put it to shame. That's what I'm saying. This is pathetic fluff on his face. But then again, the cigar is a great look. You can, you know, it makes it look much better.
It does. A cigar is always a good look.
Does he remind you of a certain YouTuber we know?
No idea.
Actually, now you mention it, I've never thought about that before, but he does, doesn't he, a bit? I think it's the beard. It's that style of beard. Yeah,
it's the beard.
Yeah.
Well, and the cigar.
I also like that Che isn't like posing for the camera. He's just like shouting at the photographer about communism, probably. You know, like he doesn't care. He's not in it for the photo op.
Do you think that if just like a couple of things had been different, he would have been on the right? I mean, what was he? How ideologically committed was he?
Well, I think the trouble is he was bourgeois, and he came from this kind of upper middle class Argentinian Buenos Aires family. His father was a doctor or a professor. He then went on and became a doctor, and I think the other trouble is that like he went on that big tour of South America on his motorbike with his friend, and he saw all this, you know, crushing poverty and corruption and like miners in the Andes being worked to death, and the thing is that when you see that, if you don't already have some preconceptions, it's quite difficult not to just say, okay, I'm going to become a communist then. When you see that, I mean, you know, like I personally have some views on the treatment of certain laborers in certain conditions, even nowadays, that I think would raise some eyebrows in our circles. But I think that's you know,
the tithe barn is not going to fill itself.
I don't like to see people being mistreated by employers and that sort of thing. And I this is why I'm so staunch an advocate for kind of the more feudal model of economics, where the master has a duty to the people that work under him, in the same way that they have a duty to him. Whereas now, in this sort of liberal economic system that's developed since the 1800s, we don't have that at all. It's just you're a replaceable employee that can just be fired, and another 10 men can be brought in to do your job at a cheaper rate. So I mean, again, not a communist, not a socialist, but what I'm saying is that Shea could have been based if he had read some based books before he left on his motorcycle trip, or if he had been like a devout Catholic, he could have maybe been based, but he unfortunately was a communist.
I do wonder if there's something kind of about the Doctor type as well, but I don't want to get in trouble, as a large number of my family members are doctors, so I'll be kicked out for slandering them. Now, Hat, you have some additional photos. I can try and boost them up now quickly. I'll see if I can get them working.
Additional photos.
Well, yes. I don't know if you want to do the Gwenon ones.
Well, since we've got like 15 minutes, let's do those.
But you'll have to fill the space while I try.
No worries.
Boot them up, and my laptop melts.
I'll have a peruse through chat. Also, Alexander Adams, do you have any thoughts on what we've looked at so far?
No, I think we've had quite a good selection. We haven't covered the recent politicians, but I think we may have we've discussed those a little bit in. I think we had a stream on political portraiture, didn't we?
Mm-hmm. I think we did. Yes,
we had the Tony Blair one and
the Obama one.
Politicians. Yeah, so we had some
terrible.
Yeah, so we have actually covered. So if people are interested in fashion and contemporary politics, we have actually covered this if you go and find that particular stream.
Somebody called Fraser in the chat saying that Ian Blackford is the worst dressed politician. The fat Scottish independence minister.
Yeah. Apparently someone mentioned Pinochet, but no Pinochet.
Are we going to cover? Well, I mean, to be fair, we can probably do like a search for him, can't we?
Yeah.
I mean, Pinochet. Yeah, it's odd because you wouldn't think that somebody would be pulling off that uniform in like the 1990s, but there he was.
It's a classic look for the South American dictator with the the military uniform and the giant sunglasses.
Mm-hmm. It works in South America. I mean, as Farah pointed out, I think that Nasser in Egypt was like a bit plain looking with his like suit and sunglasses. But his King Farouk, he used to wear like those like round sunglasses, like the ones with the perfectly round lenses.
All right.
And I thought that was quite a look, but yeah.
Okay, I've managed to get several of them, but a lot of the links aren't working because of the way I've pasted it across. So this is.
Oh.
I'm going to try my best here. The quality of your service is normally way better than this. This is the Gwenon.
That's not Gwenon.
Is that working? Okay.
Yeah, it's working. But that's a chap called Ananda, and I can't pronounce his last name because it's so wild. But it's Kumaraswamy, I think is how you pronounce it. Who was he's basically Kum is in his name. Let's everybody get that out of your system now. Yes, Kum is it. But he was basically like a sort of Indian Julius an Indian Julius Evola. Who was active around the same time? Well, earlier actually. It's quite weird. He was like this Indian art critic who like moved to England to study in like 1870 something, and like lived in Stroud in Gloucestershire. And he had like he had 3 wives, and like 2 of them were English. And he wrote a lot of quite influential books. No, not at the same time.
Okay.
But he wrote a lot about hermeneutic tradition, and kind of he was a sort of metaphysician. As I say, very very. I don't know how much of an influence he had on Evola, but he wrote about many similar concepts that Evola did. And I quite like this just sort of simple clerical tunic, because I wanted to kind of return to like people who are based, but they don't go for like bling. They go for like a return to the monk, a return to the sort of priestly vestment, simple garment. And I quite like this look.
Is there something Maoist about it though? Again, it's interesting around the kind of simplicity, but that there's always been that kind of simplicity to a lot of kind of Christian robes. I wonder if there's something of the religious
possibly
iconography about some of those kind of communist outfits to try and kind of claim the similar headspace.
Quite possibly. And in fact, he actually had a son who became a Catholic priest, because they sort of were tending to that way, I think. But yes, I mean, I actually think that arguably the sort of monkish robe is more based than all the bling, especially since we talk about castes, and you have the kind of kingly caste and the warrior caste and the priest caste. I always think it's good for the priestly caste to be kind of plain in a way. And I know that obviously, as somebody speaking as a Catholic, this may seem somewhat contradictory, but I'm not so much talking about like the hierarchy of priests. I'm talking about sort of your average everyday monk, your average everyday just simple priest who just who sort of goes about and spreads the word of the faith. I like it when they dress like that.
Are you having a Jesuit moment?
No, not having a Jesuit moment. Think of this as a Dominican moment.
Oh yeah,
there you go.
Okay. That's
Or a Franciscan moment.
Okay. Do you want to take us through?
Oh well, here's our friend Yukio Mishima. I mean, where do we start with him? So, not really a person of power. This is sort of quite loosely fitting the definition of politics, though he was very much involved with politics in his life. Japanese author who also was a bodybuilder, model, actor, lecturer, personality, celebrity. I mean, he basically did everything. He wrote some extremely wonderful, poetic, metaphysical novels, which I recommend everybody read.
The Golden Pavilion is fantastic.
Yes, that's my favorite of his. The Golden Pavilion. It's, beautiful, but the translations are excellent too. Really painstakingly thought out translations. So he was born in the 1920s, and as a young man, he wanted to die for the emperor in the Second World War. But he had a cold when he went to the recruiting office, and they diagnosed him with tuberculosis. And he therefore was unfit for service. And he didn't correct them, basically. He had this kind of sort of moment of what he described as, cowardice, where because he desperately wanted more than anything to take part in the war. But when it came to it, he basically said, no, I'm not going to go. And he said he became a writer, and this kind of was like his formative his sort of moment. And he went on to become a very well-known writer. He was Japan's most famous author for many years, arguably he still is. And he was known for his kind of slight ridiculousness. He would often have pictures of him with his like oiled up pecs, with his nearly naked, with a samurai sword, and wearing all these sorts of costumes. And he had a house that was quite tacky, actually, quite a big like sort of plaster statue, a classical statue of a naked youth outside, and this sort of thing. But it was all kind of on purpose. He kind of wanted to play this character, and he would play up to people's expectations of him quite a lot, and he was his own canvas, to use that very cliched term. He was kind of he himself was an art exhibition on his own, and he founded his own army in the 70s, a private militia because at the time Japan was going through political upheaval with massive protests regarding the relationship with the US. And he founded an army of right-wing students from the universities, and he made them all swear they would never let Japan fall to a left-wing revolution. And then he attempted to stage a coup in the 70s by capturing a military base, taking the commander hostage, and giving a speech to the troops. This didn't work. The troops jeered him, and he committed harakiri in the traditional way, committed the ritual suicide. And realistically, like, he knew this wasn't going to. He knew this coup was never going to succeed. It was really just he had felt that he had done everything he could as an artist and as a writer, and so wanted to, go out with a bang. Basically, he didn't want to just sort of die of old age.
And then talk through. I mean, I've seen some of the outfits. Sorry, again, due to the potato PC, this is the only photo that's managed to make it. How would you kind of describe what he's wearing right now? I mean, well, it's certainly not traditional.
No, I mean, the thing to remember about Mishima is that he was quite the homosexual. He was like openly homosexual, which was not really a big deal in Japan at the time because
he was also married as well.
Yeah, well, of course, because he's a proper traditional homosexual. He has a wife and children. But yes, it was not really frowned upon traditionally in Japan, provided that it wasn't so open. Like, it wasn't really considered that bad for men to be homosexuals, just provided it was sort of not really a public thing. You just sort of did it behind closed doors. And I believe his family were all aware of that. And so, yeah, he did have a tendency for these kind of slightly butch sort of. I mean, look at the neck on that top and the short sleeves and everything, and the leather gloves and white trousers. It's all a bit over the top, but it's what he was all about. He was arguably one of the most base people who lived in the last 100 years, and I do mean that. Like he had. He had an enormous understanding of what the traditional way was and what it was to be a man and what it was to be masculine. And I recommend everybody read his work.
Yeah, and also there's a terrific old BBC documentary that you can find on YouTube before the BBC was entirely paused, and it's very good. It's very balanced.
Yes, and there's also a film called Yukio Mishima: A Life in 4 Chapters, which is an incredible film. It's almost as if he made it himself. It's wonderful, wonderful film.
I think people may already know it slightly through the Philip Glass soundtrack. I think.
Yes, it's quite a famous for Philip Glass soundtrack.
Like Koyoshiwaki or whatever it's called. Is that?
No? I think that was when Philip Glass was doing his Japanese sort of inspired stuff, and because he was working very hard on the soundtrack to that film.
Okay.
But it's an excellent film. Highly recommend that everybody watch it as soon as they can.
Very, very cool. I mean, just in terms of the outfit, like it's actually quite Americanized. I always thought it was some kind of like baseball style.
Or maybe riding, maybe horse riding.
Yeah, possibly.
It could be, like a polo style. Again, it's hard to tell without seeing the trousers or whatever. But again, I think it's all about masculinity and just general coolness. It's unbelievably hard to pull off gloves without sleeves.
Mm-hmm.
Just try and do it. Just wear a t-shirt and put some gloves on.
You look like an NHS worker doing a COVID test. That's what you look like.
You look like a tit, basically. But he manages to pull it off well, and there's some kind of cool belt going on there. Again, Japanese fashion is very interesting because they're quite into. It's a combination of loud prints. So there's a large print tradition that goes on still. I've run several fashion marketing campaigns in Japan historically in the past, and I tend to find they like these kind of very bold and bright prints still, or they like super plain but again super high quality. So again, something like these trousers here, where there's lots of these little individual details which makes this quite a complicated garment. I don't know if you can see even like the belt straps. It's not a rectangle. It's like trapezoid or whatever, and then
Oh,
there's
yes,
some additional detailing at the bottom. Just really nice little touches that again show that they've had the additional thought and handwork put into it. Yeah, and a lot of Western fashion still. Watch, nice. Are you a watch? You're a pocket watch person, are you?
Well, yeah, because I've always found wristwatches kind of uncomfortable, and I find them a bit. They've never really looked that good on me. But since I pretty much always have a waistcoat on, I thought, well, I'll have a pocket watch then, and have a chain instead of a wristwatch. There isn't really any reason to it other than that. I just find them more comfortable. But yes, I own like a couple of wristwatches, but they're quite cheap ones. There's one that I inherited from my grandfather, which is quite nice, but I don't it's just not my thing. I don't really look good in a wristwatch.
Alex?
I tend to. I like wristwatches, but the problem is with leather straps is that I have a certain degree of insecurity because I've had more than once. The leather obviously perishes, and at a certain point it snaps. So obviously you don't want it snapping while you're sort of getting on a train, and you lose your watch or some. So that gives me a degree of anxiety. So I tend not to wear watches with leather straps.
Interesting. Again, it looks great and it matches up with
it looks really good there.
The gloves there.
I know that the chat seems to have quite taken to the discussion of Mishima.
And his proclivities. Yeah.
Somebody said he should go on Joe Rogan.
That'd have been quite good. Okay, let's finish up with.
Here we go.
I mean, this is peak cape right here. This is
Augusto.
This is an actual cape. There, you can. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, that's a real cape. So, Pharaoh, one question I have for you about capes is that the properly made ones have those rows of buttons and holes down the front on each side. So, are you ever actually supposed to do all of them up and then wear it like a huge sort of like a poncho?
You can do, but you just look like a woman. I find if
right.
you see a man with a buttoned up cape. Hold on a second. Let's just explore this a second. Oh wait,
you can get all sorts of results coming up.
You're gonna have a picture of like Dick Dastardly, aren't you? Coming up.
Also, it's like I press the enter button and it's about 5 minutes before we'll see anything. I mean, look at these. This is nightmarish disasters. It's modern fashion hats. You don't want to involve yourself with.
Don't look. Cover your eyes. Oh Lord.
I mean, a lot of these. The problem is, a lot of these are like womanly cuts. Is all I can say.
Yeah,
they don't look good. I mean, look at this is a disgrace here. How to style a cape? Look at this.
But you know what the great alternative is to this is to just have a large overcoat and just drape it over your shoulders.
Yeah, I think that's a much stronger. Oh God, look at this.
I'll tell you who was based and always wore a cape was G.K. Chesterton. Always had a cape. He used to wear a cape and like a sword stick and a big white hat. Is that Liberace there? Oh God, terrible.
Again, he sort of pulls it off better than half these guys on here. This is hilarious.
Yeah, but he's
I've heard.
Yeah. Okay, we're digressing, but basically, I wouldn't wear a cape. I would rather wear a.
Oh, look at that! Look at that wholesome picture of Pinochet with his wife. It's lovely, isn't it? Look at them there. Oh.
We're running out of time. Give us a couple of minutes on Pinochet. Give us the lowdown.
Okay, Pinochet. I mean, he doesn't actually have very much of an interesting biography. Ironically, he's a Chilean, just sort of quite normal life, fairly normal sort of middle class upbringing. Went to the military academy, became a general, was sent to Europe on various missions. Worked his way up the ranks, was known to be quite a competent administrator. And then what marked him out was that he was very apolitical at a time when the Chilean army and society were completely split between traditional Catholics and conservatives, capitalists, landowners, everybody like that, versus the communists, basically. And then what happened was Salvador Allende wins an election in very contentious circumstances because there's a split in the two main parties, thus causing Allende to become president with less than like 20% of the vote or something small. And the trouble is, of course, that as watchers of AA will know, in order to take something over, you have to capture the institutions. And the trouble is that in Chile at the time, when he became president, the left had captured the presidency, but they didn't have the schools, they didn't have the church, they didn't have the army, they didn't have anything, really. They were completely prematurely catapulted into power. They did not expect to win that election. And unfortunately, rather than playing it safe and trying to just ride out that fluke, Allende went full, sort of like full, this is it, this is the communist era now. He had like state parties with Castro, and he was inviting like Soviet members of the government over to Chile and having these big discussions. And his minister for the economy came out and said that in order for the revolution to succeed, 1 million Chileans have to die, and all this kind of chaos. And the economy began to be just thrown into havoc, and all the truck drivers went on strike. And of course, because the shape Chile is in, truck drivers are like the most important part of the economy. So everything was going wrong. And Allende made several major breaches of the constitution during that time. So the Parliament of Chile, they acted on constitutional prerogative. The executive was out of control. So they sent a letter to the armed forces saying, would you please step in and remove this president because he's insane. And at the time, Pinochet was head of the army, as I say, because he was very apolitical. Allende put him in power, not really in power, but in charge of the army, because he thought that Pinochet was, he thought that Pinochet wasn't a right winger or a left winger. He was just this good sort of gray element, and that's true. Pinochet sort of was. He didn't really have any conception of politics at the time, and then of course when the parliament asked him to do that, he stepped in as head of the junta. He overthrew Salvador Allende and took power with the heads of the army, air force, and navy and police. What happened then was that he basically tried to continue with some of Allende's policies for the next 2 years of the term. That very quickly obviously wasn't working. So he decided something quite radical had to happen. So quite famously, he sent for the Chicago boys, who were students of Milton Friedman over in America. And they came over to Chile, and they, as we know, I mean, this is a story everybody knows, but they basically rejigged the economy to run on libertarian lines, and lo and behold, it sprang back into life. The economy sort of skyrocketed to great heights under Pinochet. Things began to restore to normality. The trouble between left and right began to calm down. There was an insurgency against him, of course, but this was no longer kind of a big national feud. It was kind of an isolated thing. And he did rule with an iron fist, and it was quite a high time of state surveillance. And that you could be sent to prison or thrown out of a helicopter if you were a disloyal member of the ruling elite, or you were a communist or whatever. But for the average person in Chile, it was pretty happy times, I'm told. You can see this by the fact that when Pinochet was not in it for his own power, and he said, "Look, I was called in to restore order to the country. I have restored order. The economy is going well. Everything is going well. I'm going to step down. Let's have a plebiscite." He lost the plebiscite, but he won 44% of the vote. So as you can see, quite popular still. He peacefully stepped down and started a constitution, which was so successful and so stable that it wasn't amended at all until just last year, I think, when unfortunately the Socialist Party of Chile is once again up to its old tricks, and they are screwing us up quite royally over there, right here. But
they've just elected a full-blown globalist, haven't they?
Yes, they have. So there you go.
Is he dead? Yeah, there you go. Pinochet funeral.
Yeah,
maybe Pinochet will rise from the grave.
He didn't die long ago.
BTFO.
I remember him dying. People talking about him, even though I didn't know who he was at the time.
Okay, let's quickly talk me through the look. What do we think?
You go first. I want to hear your thoughts on this as more of a professional than I am.
Yeah, well, I think it's a relatively like just basic outfit, isn't it? I think it's general's uniform, Spanish, like some kind of Spanish, Franco-Spanish influence. This is kind of interesting, where it's like literally wearing like a big medallion, which I quite like. But apart from that, I would say not
The
really
white
that
uniform
interesting.
with the
But
sash is
cape is good.
very fetching. The white uniform with the sash is very fetching.
Oh, yeah. No, okay, I'll see if I can find it. There we go. Very nice. Again, that's a great sash there. It's well fitted, and again the motif, the embroidered motif, adds a lot. Nothing worse than a plain sash. There we go. Yeah, hat.
I mean, it's a pretty cool look. I mean, I can't deny it. I mean, this has like Tropico chic all over it, you know.
Tropico chic.
I mean, just the colors of the uniform are so specific to Chile as well that you know, you can't really go wrong with it, can you? I mean, the thing, like, I don't really have anything to say. I just think it's a good uniform, you know. And the cape looks good. He pulls off the cape because not everybody could pull off a cape. You know, I know that the academic agent is very keen on a cape, but I personally am curious as to whether he could pull it off like Pinochet does. You know,
we'll see. We'll have to. I'll have to try and craft him one for next time we meet. Alexander, any thoughts on Pinochet and?
I think he's the most stylish of the ones wearing military uniforms we've seen. Yeah, by far.
I don't know. I still love Gaddafi, big epaulette mode. He should have gone bigger, even bigger on the epaulettes, and that's he would have won. Okay, let's draw a line there. I just want to say thank you so much, gentlemen, for putting up with my terrible internet, and you know, I thought an enjoyable conclusion to fashion and politics. Let's go into kind of shill mode. Panama, do you have anything to shill specifically, or things that are coming up?
Yeah, video coming out next 2 days on paganism, and then later in the week, one after that on another topic, which is to be confirmed.
The book
of poetry is still out. As the little. I can't really shill it as a Christmas present anymore, but it's still out there. You can get an ebook or a paperback copy for very, very cheap. Keeping the prices low. I will, since that has gone over quite well, that had much more of a reception than I thought it would. I will possibly upload books of essays and early philosophical stuff that I have that I've written, which may be of interest to some people. Don't know how well those would go over, if they'd sell too well, but I will put them up anyway. So please check out on my Twitter. There are links to my Amazon page. It's Benjamin Affa books on Amazon, and they're all available there.
Wonderful. And another distinguished author / critic, Alexander Adams. When's your next book out? That's the big question. Hat's winning this year. So
he's out. Well, technically, it came out in December, though. You see,
it did. It came out.
That's last year's.
It came out on the 15th of December.
Yeah. My own next book will be coming out in April, and that will be a book on Edgar Degas.
It was very based.
Who was very based. Yeah. I hope we'll be doing a stream on him when the book appears, so we could do some timing for that. So at the moment there's 2 books available. That's Iconoclasm and Culture Wars, which you can get wherever good books or even not so good books are sold. I will also say, since AA has kind of announced this prematurely, there will be a foundations course called the Foundations of Ethics, as if I know anything about ethics. Foundation of Aesthetics, which is a slightly different branch. So I am writing that, and that will be part of the Foundations series. That won't be coming out in the near future, but it is on the way. So it's going to be a matter of well, at least a couple of, at least 1 month, or possibly 2 months. But that will be coming out. And finally, just to give a shout out to Lady of Shalott for, she's always saying very nice things about me. I don't know why, but thank you very much. I think she does great work talking about the situation in Australia, especially with the medical situation there. Finally, I will be appearing on Lambda's stream on his YouTube channel at, I believe this is 3:00 on Wednesday the 12th, where I will be talking to him and several other guests about the subject of iconoclasm.
Very good.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay. Next stream, we haven't decided the topic yet, but I'm going to go out and say an idea. I was having this concept of I wanted to do an interiors stream, and it just came to me yesterday about the home of the artist, and then maybe looking up some of our favorite artist residents where they kind of keep some of the stuff. So that's the kind of provisional idea for the next stream, but we will discuss and get back, and we're back on schedule now, so hopefully there'll be much more streams than usual as well coming into this year. So just from my side, I just want to say thank you very much for listening. Please leave a comment if you felt like we missed a particularly wonderful African dictator and you were frustrated at that. Please leave it in the comments for people to take a look at. Please subscribe, share, ring the bell, and thank you very much. Good night.
Bye, everybody.